Hey everybody, it's Catrice Bailey from When Models Talk. You are now watching episode
Pour the
26,
water out. Pour
part
the water
2, with special guest
That'll be my
Katie
time to get free
Casano.
food.
that,
Okay, my money.
that's the
So,
best thing. That's one of the best things about working in fashion is free stuff. So I do feel like you get some free
mhm,
stuff. You get free food. It might be like, a bagel or whatever, but
it's
who cares?
good.
Yep. Oh, somebody has a question.
Yeah, Beyond Beauty. Hey, girl. She says, speaking of professionalism, how does managing youth models compare to different from adult models?
Hmm.
That's a
Okay,
question.
so I have never so when you say youth, like I've never had to deal with child models or anything like that.
Hmm.
We do have child models in our fashion show, but whew, I don't have to manage them. But so when I was working in the industry, I would work with professional models. But I told Catrice this, every once in a while we'd have someone who was 16,
Hmm.
and sometimes they
Hmm.
would come with their mom. And I remember one
Yeah.
time we had a casting and this girl, I walked out and she was sitting on her mom's lap. And I'm like, okay. Also, she was like 6 feet tall. So it's just like a weird thing to see. But,
Okay.
so I just feel like when you're dealing with a younger person, obviously they're more innocent. They're a little, they're still learning. So I feel like I would
Mhm.
definitely treat them differently or understand that they're still kind of learning the ropes. I think that in a way,
Yeah.
I actually prefer working with a model that is a little bit more seasoned because they know what
Mhm.
they're doing. They're easier to work with. I feel like our culture is so youth obsessed. But I will say
Mhm.
this, I've worked with a lot of models that were like a fit model. So you would work with them. And then, sometimes you're talking to them and you're like, oh, you wouldn't even remember this. This was before you were born. And then it would come out later that they maybe had like taken a couple years off their age and they were like, not,
Mhm.
and I get it. And it's like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter really
Yeah.
how old you are, but I think our society is so obsessed with age. So I
Yeah.
can't unfortunately answer that question because I haven't worked with kids. But in general, I would say, everybody's got to get their start somewhere. So yeah, you can work with somebody younger, but you might have to understand that they might need a little bit more training. They might need
Yeah.
a little help or more direction from you. So I'm not like a narc, so I wouldn't normally complain about a model to their agent. But I would
Mhm.
say that I have had a few agents super cool. I knew them really
Say that.
well.
Say that. Say that part.
So
Say that
I
part
had,
over again, because you
okay, I'm cutting out a little bit. So I'm just saying, like every once in a
yeah.
while, if I had a younger model that I felt like she needed a little extra help from her agency, if I thought I could tell her
Mhm.
agent without her getting in trouble, like I wouldn't want someone to get in
Mhm.
trouble, but if I thought like feedback could help her, I might tell her agent
Mhm.
like, hey, you know what? She might need a little help walking, like if it was a runway show or
Mhm.
just like positive
Mhm.
feedback. But so I think when you're working with someone younger, you have to know that they might need a little more training. Or
Yeah.
it might be like a learning curve. And then when you work with someone older, they're great because they kind of know what they're doing. So it's easier.
Mhm.
So I always liked working with models that had a little more experience personally.
Yeah. So I'm gonna add to that too. Um, when it comes to like the younger models, some of them don't know professionalism. Some of them don't know certain things. Where it's like, I, and they could be 16, they could be some of them be 17, some of them are 18. That's still considered like young.
Right.
So when you run into even under the age of 21, because their mind's still developing, they growing. So it's a process of trying to get them to be more professional. I feel like the ones that are in high school, sometimes they don't know. So they'll go and they'll, you know, complain about, okay, so how much time we got left? And I'm like, girl, you here for a job. What we complaining about? When it comes to their makeup or their hair, they may not like it. Or sometimes they might not even like the outfit. Like, why I gotta put that one on?
Right.
No, you're here for a job. But I feel like you have, I would say 50-50. You have some that can be very unprofessional and need work versus some that come in and they're like, okay, so I know what I'm supposed to do. My agency taught me or told me exactly
Right.
what I'm supposed to do. And they gave me details of everything. I think sometimes it boils down to the agent too, or the agency. Sometimes they might have told them something that was incorrect, where
Mhm.
you only going to be here for 3 hours, where you wind up having to be there for maybe 8 hours. That was a full day. Oh, I didn't understand. This is stuff when you're there. Me, I don't even pay attention to the time. I'm like, look, I'm here. I'm going to be here. I'm going to do what I got to do until the job is done. When it's done, I'm going to say bye. See y'all later. Have a
Right.
good night. And then I'm going to go my merry way and go finish whatever I got to do. But I'm going to make sure that, you know, I'm always, even if I'm not happy about something, I'm always going to show professionalism, because you don't want to have it going around that you were very unprofessional, that
Right.
you weren't being nice, or you were being rude, or you don't want that in your career. You want to come
No,
off as, I'm great to work with.
absolutely. Because that could affect you getting called back. That could
Yep.
affect you. I might be like, hey, you know what? The models at this agency, they're divas. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, that could affect your agency. So I
Yep.
feel like I get it. I always really feel for the models. You know, I try to be understanding and be super nice to them. But you know, like you said, it's nice when they're there and they're professional. Because look, sometimes I'm like, I'm tired. I'm not getting paid as much as you guys are sometimes. So I'm like, I'm tired. I want to go home. Like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, I think having a good attitude and like, look, like you were saying, like, somebody, it's not your fault if you haven't been taught something yet. So if you come in and you don't know what you're doing, that's not your fault. If you come in and you have a bad attitude, that is your fault. So that's like a different thing. So that's why I would never get mad at somebody if they didn't know something. That's not their fault, because then you can tell them and then they can learn. So I think like that's important for anybody, is like being humble, like still being open-minded and being like, I can still learn something, or I'm not always right, or I don't always know everything. You know, and I think as you get older, you get more confident. So sometimes you're like, well, it's this way or that way. Like you were talking about how it's harder for older people to change, accept change. But I feel like this year, I mean, all of us had to change everything that we're doing. So hi, Eddie. My friend Eddie's here. So yeah, so I think that this year really has taught all of us, because, you know, I was telling you, Catrice, like, we were 1 week, everything's normal last March. And then the next week they're like, oh, we're not coming back again. Clean out your office. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm teaching, you know, studio design classes. So I was like, what am I going to do? But, you know, I think that that's also important, is you have confidence in yourself, Catrice. You know that nobody's going to keep you down and no one's going to stop you from succeeding. So I think, like, as a designer, and then also, well, because especially as a designer, so when you're a designer, your job basically, it's almost like the Amazing Race. I'm exaggerating, but I feel like you're trying to do all this stuff, and all of these things go wrong all of the time. And they're like, oh, you're not getting this fabric. This thing fell through. We're changing it the night before. Like, all these crazy things happen, but you have to just figure out how to make it work, you know?
So do y'all do that with the students sometimes, where you be like, okay, this is what we're doing, and then on purpose change it?
I try not to. I don't want to totally traumatize them, but I mean, I will say to them all the time, I'm like, guys, you know, design, it's an iterative process. You're going to do versions of stuff. Usually your first version isn't your best. You have to do a couple versions. So it's really normal to do something and not like it and start over. And then you have to keep your eye on the clock and be like, okay, this is, now I have to kind of go with it. But so I just think that's like a really good life skill, is being like resilient, and then just knowing, like, if something changes, I just gotta roll with it. I gotta roll with the punches, and I have to trust myself that I will figure it out. So like having a plan B is really important, and I think that's a good life lesson for anybody, is kind of just being potential and being like, okay, if this thing happens, what else can I do, you know?
Yeah. And Beyond Beauty said everything is being affected by the COVID shutdown. How are models managing and finding work in this season? Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I feel like when it comes to, well, if you're assigned to any like casting agency or any booking type of agency where, well, like casting networks or Actors Access or anything like that, you can automatically submit yourself, but you do have to go through a process of You got to take a COVID test if you book the gig. You can just submit yourself. That's the easy way to do it. But what I'm finding is from a lot of models, if you're with an agency, right now, start looking towards maybe an agency. They'll be able to book you different gigs, and you'll have more of an opportunity, especially boutique agency, which is like your mother agency. Definitely go through them. I know a lot of models that are actually booking a lot. Some aren't, but a lot are, because you think about, they want a lot of e-commerce stuff going on right now because people aren't really meeting together. So e-commerce is where it's at, and e-commerce is where it's stuff online. It's you know, y'all know what e-commerce is, right? So more online stuff, more commercial, different things of that nature. So people are booking, and but more e-commerce, more commercial. So definitely, if you're a model, start looking. I would say start getting yourself together to look towards an agency and being scouted through an agency so that you can actually get signed to an agency and get more work. So if I guess I answered that correctly. I don't know. If you got another question, just ask. Okay. So now you said that you were involved in casting when you were with your job. How was that experience, and what were some things that you learned?
Oh, it was crazy because I had never been the person directly like working with agencies. So how it worked, and I saw my friend Jennifer was on here before, and she used to do it at my job before I did. This was at a company called Nanette. So when I was there, so we hired someone. His name is John Pfeiffer, and he does casting for a lot of big things. He does casting for the Victoria's Secret show, you know. So he's cool. I love John. So I would talk to him, and I'd be like, okay, John, you know, this is the show. This is how many looks we think we have. This is our budget. So then he would organize a casting, and we'd have models from all the, you know, like Ford, Elite, Women, Wilhelmina, you know, all the usual ones. And then they would come, and they would just, you know, they would look at their book, and then I would put, you know, their cards up, and then we would review them. And then usually we were working with the younger talent, the newer talent, because that was obviously in our budget, you know. But then it was just really interesting because I would have been like, you know, Fashion Week, when you're a designer, it's really like fashion 2 or 3 months of solid work every day with no days off. And I mean that for real. I mean like Saturday and Sunday. So you're working weekends, you're working late. So usually you start eating like junk food. So you feel like kind of like fat or like bloated, and like you're eating all these like fries and weird food, and then all these
stuff.
Yeah, and then all these like cute models come in, and you're like, oh my god, like I feel so like bad. But no, they were all so interesting because some of them were, you know, they were from all over the world. We had models from Africa, Russia, Asia, all over Europe, you know. So you would talk to them, and they're all so sweet, and you just look at them, and you're like, oh my god, this girl is a kid. She's like 17. No, they're like young kids. And you know, I just thought it was cool. So it was really fun to work with them. Then we would pick the models that we were going to go with, and then I'd have to organize the model fittings, and man, whew, that was probably the hardest thing because I would schedule it all out, but then they would all be super late because they're coming from other, you know, castings and fittings. So literally as soon as they would start running late, someone would come and yell at me and be like, Katie, where's the model? I'm like, okay, I'll call the agent. So I call the agent, and the agent's like, if she's not more than a half an hour late, she's not late yet technically for those fittings. That's what they said it. So then I learned that I had to be like, if someone asked me where the model was, I'd be like, oh, I just talked to her agent. She'll be here in 10 minutes. That wasn't true. But like, I was just like, you have to go with the flow. You can't control it. So, you know, so that was super interesting. And then it was always cool working with models because then I feel like I got to know some of them a little bit better and like have a nice relationship, just like with you guys. You know, like the last couple of shows, I'd be backstage and you guys would come over and be like, can we take a picture with you? And I was like, me? Yeah. And yeah, it was so cool. So like, you know, when you work closely with people, like at our backstage, my job, I'm the quick changer. So I wait in the middle. I'm backstage, and anyone who has a quick change, I have to like rip your clothes off and like get dress real fast. So I feel like you guys like look for me and you like trust me and you come to me backstage. So it's kind of, I feel like when you work with models a lot, they have, you can make a nice relationship with them and like trust each other, you know? So I think that's super cool. So it was a super fun experience. Kind of stressful sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, because you know, let's say the day we were doing fittings, so we would do all the fittings for the whole show on like 2 days, and it'd be the weekend before the show, Saturday and Sunday. So if it was the show that happens in February, I feel like every other year there'd be like a blizzard. So all of the models were late. Or they get confused or something. So they're all late, and then everyone's getting mad at me, and I'm like, oh my God. So I was like, I'm gonna have some wine when I get home because this is crazy. But it's just one day, and it's also not personal. So anyone that else that is stressed there, it's like, and then they're fine afterwards, and you're all fine. And so definitely, it was just like a lot of timing stuff to coordinate, but it was super fun. And then I did also help cast models for like photo shoots and things like that. So that was a little different. And I feel like one interesting thing I learned is that because of social media, if you're someone that books models, you have to think about how you're going to use the imagery, and you have to tell the agency what that is, because what you pay for it might be very different depending on what it's used for. And that's something that we didn't really have to worry about like 5-6 years ago. But now if you're doing something and it's going to be on someone's Instagram or it's going to be in an ad, that's totally different pricing than if it's in your lookbook, you know?
Yeah. So going into, because I definitely want to talk about something that you did, which was amazing, and that was you made masks for Black Lives Matter. So give us the details of how that even started and how it all went.
Okay, so when the pandemic first started, I was losing my ever-loving mind. I was like so stressed out. I had a lot of people in my family that had coronavirus, and you know, we're all stuck in the house, and I had to change what my job was. Like, you know, teaching my classes was hard. So I felt like kind of for a month or so, I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. Then after a month or so, I was like, okay, I need to start doing something, because I'm going to go crazy. So I started making masks, and a lot of the hospitals around here, they didn't need any masks. But so I was like, you know what, I'm going to call homeless shelters. So I called some homeless shelters. They said they needed masks, and I had already been making masks for my friends. So I started making a bunch of masks for homeless shelters, and I'd get, you know, if my friend paid for a mask, I would donate one mask to a homeless shelter. So then I started a whole, like hundreds and hundreds of masks, and then it kind of became like my main thing that kept me sane. And then when George Floyd got murdered, I was so upset, and I was like, can I do something to help in any small way? So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have a fundraiser for Black Lives Matter. So what I did, I was like, okay, everybody, I'm gonna have a fundraiser. I didn't set a goal or anything, and I was like, I'll just make masks, and whatever I make, 100% of what people paid for, I'm gonna donate to Black Lives Matter. And I couldn't believe the response I got. I sold out, because I be like on my fabric. I sold out in like an hour or two, and I donated $1,000 to Black Lives Matter, which was amazing. So yeah, so I feel like this pandemic has really taught me that, like, if you have a skill, like, you know, whatever that skill is, if you can find a way to do it, and it can even be something as simple as like sewing, and then if you can connect that with like your community, that is such a powerful thing. And you know, I just felt it was such a painful time. It still is a painful time. And you can do anything to show your community or your friends that you care about them, that you want to help them, that you support them. I think that's our job as human beings. So, you know, it was a really good experience. I was completely shocked, like, by some of the people that bought them, like somebody, you know, people I hadn't talked to since high school, you know. It was incredible. Yeah. So.
And how many masks would you say you had to actually make, or how many did you have in general in
For
order
that
to
one, for that, I
mhm.
did, I think I did 50 or 60 masks. No, 70.
60?
No, I think it was 70. Yeah, 70.
70 masks. Look, making masks is time consuming. I made
It
them.
is.
It's a lot of work. Cause I can sew just a little bit. And I mean, and it was a lot. So I can only imagine 70. And you made them by yourself? You didn't get
I
no help?
did. I did get my cousin, my little cousin Vincent, and my aunt. I got them to help me cut out the fabric because that takes a while. So it was like
That's
I
the
want to
longest
give them
part.
credit. Yeah, I want to give them credit because they did help me with the fabric. So it was a family affair, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I
But yeah,
definitely
it
want
took me. It was a lot of work. That took me probably 60 hours or 70 hours, something like that. So.
did you write it down for volunteer work? Volunteer hours? You put it down.
Well, I
Because
mean,
it's a lot. It's a lot of work. And I thank you so much for doing that, because I think in that time, all we were really thinking was we just wanted support. And when it comes to Black Lives Matter, everybody just wanted support, wanted people that did not quite look like us to just support us and say, okay, or help in some way. I think that was more than anything. Because even when it came to like the Blackout Tuesday or something like that, they did something where it was, you put your black screen on on your Instagram, and it just made you want to be like, okay, we just wanted support. That's all. It was just supporting the whole thing, and I thank you so much for supporting, because I was like, that's my girl, Katie, right there. Yes, Katie.
well, thank you.
I was like, thank you. Because that's just the main thing, just supporting each other. It doesn't matter what their cause is. I think all people are doing and what they want is just support, and just everyone just being better and doing better. So when I saw that, I was like, yes. But I was like, you know what? I was over here making masks myself. And I was like, she got this. She got it. Because it's too much. I was getting into, me and my niece, we turned it, I really did it for her. I was actually making the mask to support, like, for my kids and for me. And then a friend of mine told me that I sent her a picture. I was like, oh, look what I made. And then sent her a picture, and she was like, oh, can you make one for a nurse friend of mine? Because they ran out of masks. They don't have any masks at the hospital. And you got to constantly reuse your mask.
Right.
And she was like, can you make her one? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, how much do they cost? And I was like, is she a nurse? It's free for her. She don't
Right.
pay. What's she paying for? She out here helping. So, and then we turned it into a business where we were selling it. Well, my niece, because she was like, Aunt Trees, I want to make some money. So can we make masks? So I taught my daughter how to sew using the sewing machine. I taught my niece, and I taught my son, I taught him too, and I taught him how to cut it out and everything else, because I like to just teach my kids things.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say thank you so much for the support, darling. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
But also getting into trust, because I know we had a conversation about when it comes to you being a professor, and trust plays a huge part when it comes to their designs and the students and everything else like that. So can you touch on that for a little bit? I know I'm holding you for a little bit longer, just a little bit longer.
That's okay. Yeah, so like if you're working with people at a job, it's kind of similar, you know, if you're a boss or a leader, but I think especially it's more important when you are working with kids, because they're learning, they're shy, they're still figuring out life. Maybe somebody told them they're not good at something. They think they're not good at something. Sometimes they think they're like hot, you know what? You never know. But like I feel like when you first start talking to someone, you look at their designs. When I went to school, it was a little different. People would be pretty harsh in a critique, and people would cry, but that was how art school was, you know. But now I feel like if I'm gonna really be able to work with a kid in a creative class, the first thing I have to do is, first of all, I have to listen to them. So I have to ask them, like, what are your goals? Like, what are you trying to do? How strong are you technically? Like, are we going to be able to do it like this, or do we have to think of a creative way to do it? So I think like talking to them and listening to them, then also telling them about you and where you came from and what your experience is, so they understand where you're coming from and why you're saying stuff. And then I think that, you know, you have to get them to open up to you and to trust you, because I'm in class. So my classes, Catrice, are, you know, 3 hours or 4 hours long twice a week. So that's like a long time. You really get to know somebody.
Yes.
So I feel like if the kid really understands that your feedback is based on your professional opinion, your feedback is based on you trying to help them, your feedback is based on you trying to get them to make the best thing possible, you're trying to inspire them, and that it's not personal. If you can cross that threshold, you get to a really good place. And then that's also where you make, like, you know, I've only been teaching for 5 years, but I really believe that you make like long lasting, like lifelong relationships, because you're like, you feel like you could, I don't know, like compete on a show where you're trying to win something, because you're like a tight crew, you know. And it's the same when you're a designer, when you work on a design team, you know. So I just think that it's important when you're working with young people to really establish trust, because then they can feel comfortable. They can feel comfortable opening up to you and sharing their ideas and being vulnerable and talking about hard things. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, that's personal. That's a little personal. Like, take it back a notch, you know. But
Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Really.
Right. Like tell that to your friend. But yeah, at the end of the day, though, it's like a really special, beautiful relationship to feel like you help somebody on their path of you know, becoming a designer or whatever. So yeah, I would definitely say one of the first steps is trust, because also if they're like, why is she telling me this? Like, what does she even know? Like, what is she talking about?
Yeah,
You know, and sometimes they still, yeah, sometimes
they'll
they
be
still
thinking that you've actually been through some things.
Right. And but also as a professor, I do have to know that, listen, every once in a while somebody's not going to like you. That happens sometimes, you know, or you can't get through to everybody, or sometimes you might think you have a nice relationship and someone, maybe you hurt their feelings sometime and you didn't know, you were giving them feedback and they thought you were criticizing. You know, all that stuff can happen. So at the end of the day, it's all like human relationships. So like when we were talking about working with somebody difficult, I feel like in any work situation, what's going to really get you ahead in life is you have to know who you are, but you have to work with other people. So if some, you know, so you have to kind of very quickly go into a situation, engage, like, you know, so as a teacher, I'm looking at each kid and I'm like, what is going to work with them as an individual? Because I have to change my approach to each kid. So I feel like that's super important. Some kids, you kind of need to be like hard on them. Some kids, you have to like hold their hand more. Some kids, I let them be very independent. Some kids, I'm like, you know, maybe they need some extra help, but you know, at the end of the day, they're all going to get to the same place. So it's super rewarding. I love it. It's super fun.
But I think I was telling you before, it reminds me of being a parent. You just got a classroom full of kids that belong to you.
Right.
For a certain amount of time. And but yours is quicker, because you either, I'm not sure if you go through you're with them for the whole 4 years or however long they're in college. Right. But for that amount of time, it's like, okay, they start off as a baby and now they go off to college. It's like that process, but quick in a short amount of time. Because let me tell you what my son said, because we had our conversation, right? And I said, you know, I said that it reminds me of being a parent, parenting. You just in the classroom, and I have my kids outside of the classroom. So, and it's all about trust. So I said to my son, I'm in the kitchen, I'm cooking. And I said, because I was like, I'm going to see if what's going on, because me and Katie had a conversation. So I said, Tommy, I was like, do you trust me? You know, because all the advice I give you on a regular basis, like, I was like, do you trust me as a parent? And he was like, yes and no. I was like, huh? I was like, what? So you don't trust your mama? And he was like, it's not that I don't trust you. He was like, but he's like, you're human and you're going to make mistakes. Sometimes you're going to give me the wrong advice and you think it's the proper advice. And I was like, so you think I'm just going to lead you to a burning fire? I'm just going, like, I'm just going to do that. But he's just like, but it made sense. He was like, we're human. So sometimes we're going to get it wrong. We're not going to always give them we're going to give them everything that we know. And that's all we could really do. But it is very important to, in the classroom and outside the classroom, to build a bond of trust. The reason why your students like you so much, because there's like, Katie's just so down to earth. She's just wonderful. And they see that. So they're just like, that's why they can't come to you like, okay, really back in. Come see your professor. I'm your professor.
Oh, you're making me blush. But I mean, at the end of the day, like getting them to trust you, I think it's also, maybe you could say this to Tommy. It's not you trust me. It's, do you trust that when I tell you something that I have your best interests, that I'm doing it for you? I'm trying to help you. Because even if someone makes a mistake, but you know they did it because they were trying to help you, that's different. You know what I mean? So, you know, like your son said, everybody makes mistakes and he could still learn from a mistake you made or whatever. But I don't think you make that many mistakes. I know you, so.
No, I said that to him. My son, I teach my kids to be very vocal. I teach them to really, really to express their minds and express how they feel. I don't like them to hold stuff in. I want them to release that because I know how it is to hold something in and not speak up. So I teach them that, but I feel like it's to a fault. You know, maybe I went overboard, you know? So I said that to him, though. I said, you know, exactly what you said. After, I was like, basically saying exactly what you said to him. And he was like, well, that makes sense. But, and then I said, so you still don't trust me? And he was like, we still in the same spot, you know, 50-50. And I was like, you know what? I'll take it, son. I'll take it. It's gonna be all right. I'm gonna take it. Just know that I'm not going to do anything that would harm you. Like just like when you're working with a student, you're giving your feedback on these designs and everything they're doing because you're like, I want you to do well. So and I have some experience in that field, so I'm giving you what I know. And then you can either take it or leave it. Has there ever been a student where they were like, they didn't want to take your advice?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, look, I'll try to tell them. I'm like, look, you know, this is my suggestion. At the end of the day, you're the owner of this design, though, so you can decide what you want to do. I'm like, listen, there might be some kids that they're going to be like, well, I'll do what she said because I want to get a good grade. I don't know. And sometimes maybe they'll listen to what you said or change it or listen to part of it, or sometimes they won't. And then like, if they don't, and later when it comes out and it comes out really good, I always give them credit for that. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, I wasn't sure about that thing, but you proved me wrong. I don't ever be like, I told you so. I would never do that. Like, it doesn't come out. But no, at the end of the day, I do think it's important though, is like you give them, I like to give them choices. I don't like to say you can't do something. I like to say, look, here's a couple ways this could shake out. You could do this, you could do that. And it's really up to them. And I know I push them pretty hard. Like I want them to, because at the end of the day, like I'm a perfectionist. I care so much about what I want to do. I want everything to be amazing. So, but I think there also comes a point where they have to be like, okay, enough, I'm done. Like I like how it is. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Like I also have to know sometimes when I need to just back off and be like, you know what, we're good here, you know? So I think that's like a good thing for all of us to do. But yeah, sometimes they don't want to listen though, and that's their right, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Because just like you said, sometimes it could be a hit or a miss sometimes where you like, okay, well, I told you to do this, but it actually worked out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Versus sometimes you're like, look, you ain't want to change it, but not in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you just
didn't want to change it, so
yeah.
I tried to tell you. Let me not.
No, but
So,
usually they're like really good about like, because I get them when they're seniors, so they're used to like hearing all different feedback. So then that's something else I try to do is I try to increase opportunities for them to talk to other people besides me.
mhm,
So that way they know that they're getting different perspectives. That could be inviting other teachers, it could be inviting people from the industry, it could be in some of our classes. I have them work in groups almost as if they're on like a design team and they have to like work with each other on stuff so that they're giving each other feedback first. Whenever we have a critique, like if we're doing something that's not, when I'm talking directly to a student, that's different. But if I'm talking to them in a group,
mhm,
I always try to let them talk first before
mhm,
I say what I think,
mhm,
because I want them to feel empowered that their opinion is important and that they should be able to
mhm,
share it. And even though the teacher, you know, we're all have our place in the room and we all have our opinion and feedback and we all have a
yeah,
place for that. So that is something I try to do so that it's not always like I'm telling them everything.
yeah. Because sometimes it's like you can become tone deaf. Like when a parent's talking, you become tone deaf, and you just be like, and you kind of like, what's the word for it? When you hear somebody talking, but you don't hear them because you kind of block them out. I do that a lot,
My
but with
dad
the
does
kids.
that.
Hmm.
My dad, I'll be like, Dad, does this look okay? He's like, yeah, it looks great, honey. And you're like, you're not even looking at me. You're like, yeah.
He's like no, he was like everything looks good, so I
Yeah,
don't even need to get your advice. You already look good, girl.
right.
You look good.
Well,
So when
there
it comes,
comes oversaturation where you can't like take in anymore or you're like
uh-huh.
not there. So I get it sometimes that you can't like be present all the time.
She said, Love Akeisha said passive listening.
Oh, passive listening.
Yes.
I like that.
That's my best friend, y'all. That's my best friend.
Hi.
Hey, best friend. But before we go, I wanted to also say, so when it comes to working with the students, do y'all ever have models that come in and help them as far as like fitting and how to putting the actual clothing on the models?
Yeah, so not during pandemic times, but normally what we do is we have the students fit their clothes on a student model first. So they'll do fittings on a student model. So that's like a non-professional model usually.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times the models are they're kids, you know, they're like the same age as the
Yeah.
student, their roommate or something. And we just ask them
Yeah.
like close to the right measurements. So that's always kind of fun because some of the models are like, you know, and they're like so into
Uh-huh.
it. And then sometimes they're like really shy
Yeah.
and and then I'm working with them and especially if it's like a guy model too, because sometimes there's male
Yeah.
models. This is like a young guy, so I don't they're always like really shy. So I don't want to make them feel weird. Because if it was like a professional model, if we were doing a fitting for real, I might even like
Mm-hmm.
touch you. Like you know, I'd
Mm-hmm.
be like pinning the clothes or move your
Yeah.
arm, like nothing crazy. But I wouldn't do that with a boy model, you know, at school.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they do work with models. And then one thing I like to do that I did in the industry and every place I did
Mm-hmm.
work with was that we'd be fitting something and I'd say, now ask your model
Mm-hmm.
what they think. And we're not necessarily asking them about the design per se. You're asking them like,
Mm-hmm.
is it comfortable? Can you move? Does it feel okay?
Yeah.
Anything you're noticing, like we ask them to talk to us because I think
Mm-hmm.
especially because they're a kid, like you know, a student model, they're like
Mm-hmm.
nervous. They don't want to like say anything wrong. And I'm like, no, especially when you're a girl, like a young girl and you're making clothes for a male model, you don't really
Mm-hmm.
think about some stuff about menswear. Like for example, if you have pants, you don't want to have a zipper in the back of the pants. That's not going to work for a
Yeah.
guy, right? And
Yeah.
those are things you don't think of until you think of it and you're like,
I
oh,
really wouldn't have not
right.
thought about that.
Yeah, so like that kind of thing and that's what you kind of have to ask your model. You're like, how is this working? Is this everything comfortable? Do you feel like you can
Mm-hmm.
walk? Like sometimes we'll make the models walk in the room because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm like, I think that the skirt is too tight at the bottom. So maybe we have
Uh-huh.
to
Yeah.
split it, you know. So yeah, so we always try to work with the models. Unfortunately, we can't hire professional models for that. But in a
Yeah.
way, I think it's super cool to have it be students. It makes it like
Yeah, it
it's a
is.
cool experience for the model too. I think they always like get a kick out of it. Yeah, I love it. It's super
Yes.
fun.
And I see that some of the students wind up doing New York Fashion Week.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work? Like, how do they get to that point?
So what we do is normally everything's different right now, but normally
Yeah.
the students do 2 senior collections. We actually changed that, but before they did 2, one in spring. So then all the professors would go to all of the presentations. They would see all of the collections, and they would vote on what they felt were like their top 2. So then we would vote, like, and this would be an anonymous vote. And then we would look and see like whoever had the most votes, that's who got to go. And
Okay.
yeah, it was super cool.
That's nice. Because I know I would see like on your I think it's Jefferson Fashion and Design, their Instagram page, or your page, and y'all be in New York with the kids. And I think one time I was in New York because I did New York Fashion Week, and I saw y'all there, and I was like, look, what y'all doing here? But one of the students was showing their collection, and I was like, that's pretty cool. And what was the other thing? Does the students do anything else, or does anything else come out of them creating their collection?
Yeah, I mean, so we do the photo shoot, then the stuff is in the fashion show, and then in the fashion show, then we hire industry judges, or what? Not we don't hire them. We ask them to do this for us. So then they come in and they'll look at all of the clothes, and this is totally anonymous. They don't know who is who, and then they'll vote on different things like best senior collection, most creative, best junior collection, but excellence in menswear, whatever that is. And then a lot of those awards have prizes, which is cool. And then besides that, we try to do there's a lot of scholarship opportunities. We'll try to hook the kids up where they can find something for a scholarship. We just had a bunch of students win for this show. It's the Fashion Scholarship Fund. It used to be called a bunch of our students won that. Our school had the second highest wins, and it was super cool. And the kids won, a lot of the students won money. Some of the awards were sponsored by Virgil Abloh, who is the designer from Off-White and Louis Vuitton. So he's like a huge deal. So that was amazing. We've had students go on Good Morning America and do like this competition to design a dress, to redesign something. We did a couple things that I actually was a part of a project that our students designed dresses that were presented with this like special printing technique by Epson printers in New York Fashion Week. And that was super cool. So we're just always trying to help make opportunities happen for them. So it's, and I think one important is like in fashion, you're always like working hard on your collection. But I also think that it's important. We're really trying to emphasize the process. And I think that, getting to the end result, you can do all these things to make it happen, and it could look good, or maybe it didn't work out right, but you still learned all that stuff while you're making it, no matter how it looks. So I feel like sometimes they're like, this was worthless. Why did I do all this? I hate it. And I'm like, no, you did. You got something out of this. And that's a hard lesson to learn. It happened to me recently. I made something as a gift for somebody. I made a kimono and I messed it up. And I was like, man, I was like so mad at myself. But you just have to get really zen with it. And I'm like, well, you win some, you lose some. And I know next time I'm going to change this one thing in my design to make it better. So,
So question, which is my last question, right? Have you ever just made clothes for like just to sell? Like, have you ever done that? And have you ever thought about doing it? Like opening your own, doing your own thing?
No, you know why? Because I like security. So I like to work for someone else and just do design stuff. And I want them to have to worry about keeping the lights on, I want them to have to worry about paying the bills. I don't want to have to worry about, I want to be the talent. I want to come in, design, and go home. Of course,
No, that's right.
I have thought about it. I absolutely have thought about it, but
Mm-hmm.
like you have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have a lot of money. I don't want to discourage anybody, but it's not easy. So I feel like
Mm-hmm.
nowadays though it's a little different. When I was younger, like e-commerce wasn't what it is. So now it's a lot easier to do something small. So I actually am working towards just having like an Etsy shop, and I have been selling things during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, at the same time,
About
I also like being the second banana. I like doing like all the glamorous stuff and then have someone else, sorry, I gotta plug my phone in. And then have someone else do the other stuff.
I get it. I get it because she's like, I'm not trying to do all the extra stuff. Like, look, I'm here to help. I'm a part of the team, and y'all can take care of all the other stuff, all the expenses. Just pass my money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
But look,
so
if I hit the lottery, would I have my own company? 100%. I would absolutely do it.
Yeah, because I was looking at a designer. They made pants, and I always loved high waisted. My legs is long, so I love high waisted long pants. But some of the stuff that I see y'all do, I'll just be like, only if I knew how to do that.
Well, hey, you should come to my school. We'll teach you.
That means I gotta go through the whole process of applying, getting in, doing
right.
That's too much. See,
I know.
That's the stuff that I don't want to do. Everybody's like, go back to school. I did my 4 years.
You served your time. You're done.
Yes, exactly. But I just want to thank you so much, Katie, for coming on to When Models Talk. Yes, to talk to all of us about just a little bit of everything, from fashion to designing, from how you teach your students to how you got to that point, the experiences you had in general. I just want to thank you for sharing that, because certain things we ain't even touch on, girl, but
I know
it is.
Oh,
so I want to thank you, and I appreciate you so much, and you did such an amazing job.
Oh, thank you, Catrice. Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking to you and working with you. That video you made, you went to the old pictures. I was like, no, she did not put, I was like sticking my tongue out, it was so funny.
I was like, Katie is so cute. I'm going to the time. I'm like, she's just so cute. And you just have like this art. It's like art, like, how someone, it's not aura, I don't know, but it's like art. It's just around you. Like, like you were just raised. Like, you're different. You're not like everybody else. From your style to how you wear your hair to everything, it's just so different. That's what I love about you, because you're so different. You're not like everybody else. That's why I was like, oh, me and Katie, we're gonna hang out.
I know.
We're going to the museum. I don't really go to the museum like that, but I'm going to the art museum with Katie. We're going to do some things after this pandemic is over.
Yeah, I think maybe karaoke.
I'll go with you.
Okay.
I'll go with you. And you can sing.
You can laugh at me. I'm not good, but I just like to.
I'll get up. That's like, it's like a fear of mine, right? That's like a fear.
Really?
To get up and sing in front of everybody. Even though I play around so much around the house and with people in general, but it's like other people.
Okay. I think we should do it together as a growing experience.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to talk to you. I think it's so cool what you're doing, and I love that people that are trying to get started in their career or change their career or know more about it. I think it's so cool that you're creating the opportunity for conversations and inviting all different kinds of people. And I think at the end of the day, what is kind of cool about this is something you might not have done maybe before the pandemic. Like, I feel like we're all doing crazy things that you wouldn't have done before. And that is a really interesting thing. So I think, you know, anybody who's out there that is, you know, trying to get started in your career, like, the world is your oyster, baby.
Yes.
If you work hard and have a good attitude, you can make stuff happen. So I think that, you know, you're a mover and a shaker, and you make stuff happen, and that's life. So, and you have a good heart, and that's really important.
Thank you.
So.
Oh, well, I
All right.
got you long enough, girl.
I'm gonna have a drink because I'm like,
So yes, but thank you so much, Katie Casano, for coming
Thank you.
on When Models Talk.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good night, y'all. And get your drink. I'm about to get you one. All right, bye.
Thank you for watching When Models Talk, episode 26 with special guest Katie Casano.